ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, my dear friends. I am talking about the book of Maharshi, Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi, Updesa Saram or Updesa Undiyar. In the first three videos, the summary of this book was talked about. Now the actual book Updesa Saram starts with first stanza. Karma, action bears fruit. 4. So the Creator ordains. Is karma God? It is not sentient. Notes: the term karma has already been roughly defined. See page 7. Yes, in the previous also I have defined, but a closer examination of its import and implications and a fuller description are called for when starting the philosophical discourse on that subject in this poem. Does that term denote, number 1, a state or condition of a creature, or number 2, the results or forces visible or invisible issuing out of the creature in that active condition, or third, both? Sometimes it is used to denote both. Some confine it to one or the other. If the result, that is rewards or punishments for the activity, be deferred for a long time, is it that is the result to be treated during that interval as a substance or thing which is separable from and at least to some extent independent of the agent, as the Mimamsakas among others regard it? The consequences of such a view, that is, that the fruits of karma can be transferred by the person performing it, a. by means of a resolved sankalpa prior to the performance of the ceremonial, to another, such as the principal Yajmana who ordered it to be done, or b. by a subsequent oral act or otherwise, to any person at the will and pleasure of the agent, are freely accepted by many persons of the Hindu and other communities, without regard to the theory implied in such acceptance. A third question about karma is, granting that God is the ultimate cause, the prime mover responsible for any act producing its moral or even physical consequences, does God operate by individual exercise of will in each instance, or only by general laws? And if latter, does he interfere with their operation in individual cases? These and numerous other questions arise as the subject has nowhere been fully and systematically dealt with in any single work of the Hindu Shastras. Whatever the answer to these questions, we may first consider what the doctrine of karma is and how it is applied. The doctrine of karma has thus been summed up. Every exercise of the willpower in thought, speech, and action acts as a moral cause and confers on the agent an amount of merit or demerit according to the nature of the act performed, and this moral effect influences the subsequent fate of the individual concerned. The doctrine of karma is thus an ethical or religious doctrine. It has no application to merely mechanical acts, which do not, or insofar as they do not involve moral considerations. Such mechanical acts bear fruit which is A. visible, B. obviously connected with the act, C. affecting as a rule other or external objects and not the agent, whether a person or a creature, D. Independent of the intentions of that agent, and E. consequently involves no question of a moral judgment upon or reward or punishment to that agent in future births. Maharshi uses the word karma to denote only such acts as are ordained, sanctioned, or forbidden by the scriptures. The doctrine of karma is chiefly used in Indian philosophy to explain the otherwise inexplicable inequalities found in society and the strange but by no means infrequent spectacle of good men suffering apparently undeserved and inexplicable pain and sorrow, and evil men enjoying apparently undeserved pleasure or happiness. The explanation is given by reference to acts said to have been performed in other births. Thus, the doctrine of transmigration is closely associated with the doctrine of karma. This and some other purposes within very definite limits are served by the doctrine of karma, but there are some who ignore these limits, greatly exaggerate the power of karma, and in fact make a fetish of it. As mentioned already, certain Mimamsaka rishis, hankering after certain temporal benefits, hoped to attain them merely by the adoption of the prescribed Vedic rites in a spirit of self-sufficiency. God or Mahadeva and Mahavishnu came down and prevented the proper performance and completion of the proposed sacrifices, and thus taught them the truth that beyond present human effort there is an element of divine control in all affairs to account for their success or failure. Attempts to limit God's omnipotence and depict karma as superior to God are ludicrous. Maharshi strikes at this delusion with a simple question: is this power of karma inherent in itself? In which case it will be God itself. Is it contended that karma is God itself? Why karma is one of the states or attributes of God's creatures, and consequently karma is created by God? Surely it is ridiculous to implore superiority to creation over the Creator. Sloka number 2 or stanza number 2. The result of karma, action, pass away and yet leave seeds that cast the agent into an ocean of karma. Karma yields no salvation. Yajarthat karamano niyatra lokoyam krambandhanam तदर्ये कर्मे कौन्तेय मुक्त संगम समाचार सहयज्ञा प्रजा सृष्ट्वा प्रोवाच प्रजापति अनेन परसविषय विषयद्धौमेशः वो वस्ति मुघुम देवान भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वह परस्परम भावयन्तं श्रेयः परम वास्पयतः इष्टांत भोगा इन वो देवा दास्यन्ते यज्ञ भाविता तैर्दतानं प्रदायभ्यो यो भुक्ते सतेन एव सह. भगवद गीता श्लोक chapter 3 slokas 9 to 12. These verses mean that karma is God's creation, That yajna karma, that is action after surrender alone, is safe as it does not result in bondage. That such yajna karma should be performed to please the gods who are the organs of the one God, who will bless the sacrificer with the enjoyments of prayed for, and that enjoying these after yajna frees one from karma. Notes: one may agree with the view stated in verse 1 that action, karma, is not God and is insentient, and yet feel that without worshipping action, one may get all the pleasure or happiness that one naturally longs for by appropriate action. To such a person, this verse gives the answer. Such a person is called upon to pause and reflect on the experience of himself and others. One must think clearly, accurately, define the terms used, and give oneself correct direction. Do pleasures come unalloyed? Do they last long? Are pleasures, or even a good number of them, massed together the same as human happiness? Is happiness the same at all levels of development? Pondering over these questions with the help of the experience of numerous persons, one sees that pleasures are ever alternating with pains and are all too brief. Pleasures satisfy or seem to satisfy man at his lower or animal level, but soon he sees that they are the result of titillation of senses that wear out, that they sooner or later pall upon the taste and yet leave a sense of unsatisfied, perhaps insatiable hankering, and that happiness is distinct from pleasure and has various grades, rising from the lowest human unit through various angelic grades to divine bliss, which is the one divine event to which the whole creation moves. Increasing experience shows that yielding to the love of pleasure and taking active steps to grasp it are not the way to real happiness, that sacrificing the desire, especially in an effort to benefit others, often yields more pleasure and happiness. That higher grades and forms of happiness involve greater and still greater sacrifice of desires, and that perfect selflessness is the highest happiness one can attain. Hence, Maharshi says that active pursuit of pleasure, which after all is short-lived, endlessly multiplies the seeds of desire in one's soul, entirely corrupts it, and takes it away from the grand goal of selfless divine bliss to which all sentient creation tends. Seeds are vasanas, that is, tendencies to repeat the action of the same or similar sort, that is, to do fresh karma, generally appearing as habit, instinct, predisposition, aptitude, etc. Stanza number 3. But acts performed without any attachment and in the spirit of service to God cleanse the mind and point the way to salvation. Notes: in the previous verse, the low level of allowing oneself to be engrossed in desires has been pointed out as also the high goal accessible only to those who have escaped the tyranny of desires. But from desire to desirelessness, vairagya is to steep a precipice for human frailty to scale. Hence, Maharshi points out in this verse the steps which will render the transition easier and safer. Desires and tendencies to seek and work out their gratification are deeply ingrained in the body and mind with which each one is born, and man, as a gregarious and social creature has a certain love nature, and for both these reasons, some activity and love or desire of some things are inevitable. The aspirant then should proceed on the lines of least resistance and turn his love on to God and serve Him either directly or through his creatures, including one's fellow human and subhuman creatures in a spirit of altruism and love. The effect of activity on such lines will be gradually to diminish and finally to wipe off all selfishness, the mark of the brute level, and lead one Godward. As man identifies himself with his desires and the object of his desire, these form his self at each stage. So, by following the directions given here, man may rise on stepping stones of their dead selves to higher things and to the highest. This is progressive self-realization, ending in realization of God, Atma or Brahma. Stanza number 4. This is certain puja, japa and dhyana are performed mainly with the body, the voice and the mind, and they excel each other in the ascending order. Puja is any ceremonial act of worship. Japa is the repeated utterance of God's name or holy mantras and is here used to include praise, stotra. Dhyana is meditation. The order is explained on page 11 to 13. Stanza number 5. Viewing this eightfold universe as the expression or manifestation of God, whatever worship is performed is excellent worship of God. Eightfold, the universe is said to consist of 8 parts, that is, which of the 5 elements, ether, air, fire, water and earth, the sun, the moon and the jivas, that is, individual souls. God manifests himself as in or through the universe. The purist or iconoclast, in his anxiety to think of God as pure spirit, that is, as the exact opposite of matter or form, tries to avoid in his worship any thought of the material universe and its form. But what is the result? He thinks of God in terms of light in the form of a doe or of a person under a crown of thorns, typical of pain and sorrow, or as a powerful and benevolent Father. Why? Spirit is known to us only through matter and its form. The seeing spirit can only see through its own spectacles. Thought can issue out only in and through modes of matter, and symbolism and anthropomorphism are inevitable. Human brains cannot escape the employment of forms in thinking of the formless spirit, and hence the universal use, acknowledged or unacknowledged, of forms in worship. Indiscriminate condemnation of such use betrays only ignorance and intolerance. Humanity needs forms and symbols for self-expression, especially in the field of religion, and the deity in its omnipresence, omniscience and kindness is sure to accept the devotion so expressed. The wise teacher, guide or controller should only see to it that in the act or process of worship, the devotee's mind is made to rise from a perception of the narrow limitations and petty features of the form or object used for worship, to a perception of God's spiritual nature, freedom from limitations and other grand attributes. Processes employed very widely but almost invariably. They include the invocation, avahana, or practice of the presence of God in the object or place of worship, to the pious that object, which others may view only as a piece of material spirit, is felt to be God. The earnest devotee thinks and must think while carrying on such worship that God is immanent in the entire universe and every part of it, and if he actually realizes his presence, the worship of the entire universe, Virat Rupa, or parts, that is a saint or an image, is undoubtedly worship and a good form of worship of God himself. In order that the worship should be real and such as to reach God, there must be the actual feeling of God's presence with its usual concomitants or consequences. For example, awe and reverence, mysterium, tremendous, or love, etc., which at their intensity result as absorbed or infused contemplation. By such absorption, man becomes what he adores and loves. He is in the ultimate analysis himself but an idea or state of consciousness. So also is the object of worship. Intense contemplation and absorption assimilate and fuse, that is, merge the two in one. And the object of all worship is to merge in the blissful one. Stanza number 6. The repetition aloud of his name or mantra is better than praise. Next comes faint mutter. But the best is the repetition within the mind, and that is meditation above referred to. The repetition of his name or mantra is more helpful to concentration than elaborate praise, which distracts at some stage. As concentration advances, the voice gradually sinks within, then silence crowns it all. Meditation may be on God, personal or impersonal, as a separate being or as the inmost core of oneself. Stanza number 7. Better than broken thought, meditation is its steady and continuous flow, like the flow of oil or of a perennial stream. Stanza number 8. The lofty attitude, he is I, is preferable to the attitude, he is not I. In the Sanskrit version of this poem, composed by Maharshi, he uses the phrase is considered purifying in place of is preferable. The Sanskrit Soham, which means he is I, is a well-known expression. It is used by the Advaitin to denote the unity and the identity of that which is spoken of in the first person, I, and that in the third, he. Naturally, the second person and everything in the universe is also considered to be he or that, terms which the Advaitin uses frequently to denote Brahma, the reality underlying everything. Soham, thus, in Advaitic practice, is the key mantra, constant meditation on which will help the individual to identify himself with the universal soul or Brahma, which identification or merger is the Advaitic conception of mukti, release or salvation. Soham, or he is I, and Hamsa, or I am he, are used by Dvaitin, the dualist, to express the intensity of devotion which leads the devotee completely to forget himself or herself in intimate union with God, like the water of a river when it reaches the sea, or like salt in water. And this is the dualistic conception of mukti. A gopi passionately loving Krishna forgot her identity for a time and declared that she was Krishna. So did Lord Gauranga. Comparisons are often declared to be odious, especially if they are between the tenets and favorite practices of different sects. It may therefore be pointed out that Maharshi is hitting neither at the Dvaitins nor at the retention of the element of personality in worship. Maharshi himself began with the devotion to Arunachala, the hill of light, and has composed several devotional poems. Logical analysis of personality no doubt implies elements that differentiate the person from all else. Yet there are ways of treating personality in worship so as to minimize or abolish those differences. For example, Aksharamanamlai, the Maharshi garland of letters, dualists also have a very high place for non-difference, as may be seen from the examples given above. The objections to some lower forms of personal worship are that they involve number 1, interruption, number 2, adulteration, and number 3, condition. Where none of these objections apply, the worship even by dualist is in the form of non-difference and is excellent. The attitude "he is not I" is that of the ordinary worshippers who are almost always dualists. In fact, whatever creed they may profess, their mental constitution at their early stage leads them to value personality in God and in themselves. But some of these, by force of heredity and Guru's teachings, keep the Advaitic goal at the back of their minds even from the beginning, and by force of suggestion, at long last they move from their original personal God to impersonal worship, that is, transcend personality in their God and in themselves. This process is dealt with the next verse. So I end this video here. Next video I will start from stanza number 9. So thank you for watching this video with patience. Thank you, my dear friends. Namaste. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe my channel. Thank you a lot. Namaste.